Hello friends, and thank you for joining me today. If this is your first time visiting, I certainly appreciate you giving me this opportunity. And for those that are returning, as always, thank you for your continued support. Now, for those of you that are regulars to the channel, I'm sure you're quite aware that I haven't posted a video in some time. I'm ashamed to say it's been over a year at this point. But I do keep up with the comments on the channel. I do keep up with the subscription count and all. And I want to thank all the new subscribers that are still subscribing, even though I'm not regularly posting videos at this time. I can promise you that that's going to change in the near future. Now for today's video, I'm going to be changing the power steering pump on a friend of mine's 2008 Acura TSX. He bought that car about 6 months ago, used it for a delivery job, and his power steering pump basically exploded and coated the entire engine compartment with the fluid. So we're going to go after that today. It's going to have to be replaced. One thing I'll say at the beginning of this is that this was not my garage. I did not have my tools with me and had a couple of hiccups with that. But in the end, we got the car running and the power steering did come back. Okay, the first step when we do this is we're going to need to get, if you don't have an impact wrench, I suggest you go ahead and get the nut off of the front pulley here first. It's a lot easier to do that with this inside of the car with just hand tools. I'm going to show you how we're going to do that. Okay, what I'm going to use, I wish I had a longer extension, but we're going to use this short extension right here, and we're just going to place that in between the pulley where you can see it, and then on top there. So once you get to this point, you get that nut on the front is a 19 millimeter. So that way you can just turn that counterclockwise on this particular one. And once you get it caught, then just ease that front nut off, just to get it loose. Don't worry about taking it off just yet. Okay, with that nut loose on the front of the pulley, we're going to go after the two pressure hoses here. You have a low pressure side here, and then this is your high pressure side. You can tell because it's got the fancy clamps on it and all. You have 10 millimeters holding these to the assembly. We are going to need this plastic one here for the replacement. So my friend here is going to go ahead and go after those, and I'll film that. When you take that high pressure hose off, there is a good chance that you're going to lose some fluid there, so be ready with a towel. It's being held in by just an O-ring. There you go, and of course he's coated his entire engine with his old power steering fluid.
Oh wow.
No biggie.
I'll clean it off later.
Well, yeah, we just hit the whole thing with brake clean. So we're going to just wrap that up there and just leave it off to the side.
All right.
And we'll get that cleaned up and come back in just a second. Okay, after you have those hoses off, the next step, we're going to go ahead and get the belt off of the pulley. I've taken the motor mount out of this car. You don't have to do that if you have the right tools, but what you do need is a 14 millimeter to go onto this tensioner right here. I don't know how well that's going to show up on camera with this lighting. And then once you have the 14 millimeter on with like a breaker bar, you're going to turn that clockwise, and it's going to release the tension on the pulley. Once that tension is loose, then you're just going to slip it up over off the top of the power steering pump. Then we're going to pull back. You see that tensioner moving once you get the tension off of the belt. We need 3 hands here, and we're just going to slip that off and just let it hang right there. Okay, with the belt loose now, we're ready to go after the bolts that hold this on. There's only 2. You have one here on the top, and then up underneath. Try to get where I can get you see it. It's right there where my finger is touching right now. They're both 12 millimeters, and to make this a little easier, I'm going to take the reservoir out. All you have to do is pick straight up on it. It's just clipped in, and just get that out of the way.
There it goes. There it goes. Beautiful.
Okay, when you take that out of the car, just make sure that you don't dump fluid all over your floor. So you're going to try to keep those two
Upright as possible.
ports as upright as possible. And we're just going to put it in the old box that it came from. All right, we got the old pulley that we need to transfer over to the new one. I'm going to cheat with my ratchet or my impact wrench and pull that off. And we're just going to transfer it over to the new one. Look for any washers or anything that might be left behind. I don't think this has one. Make sure it goes down over the splines. And again, if you need to wait until this is back in the car to fully tighten that, that's fine with the same method I showed you to get it off. But if you do have an impact, you can rattle it on with this. And that should be good to go. All right, and then put this back in. It's going to be the reverse of taking it back out. We're going to get those two bolts holes lined up, and then we're going to run the bolts through.
Were the bolts identical?
Yeah.
In size?
Then we'll torque the spec, click, click. I do not have the torque specs for this. Those are 12mm bolts, so I figure it's probably around the 17 foot-pound range. And there you have it.
Bada bing.
All right, guys, before I go any further with this, I'm going to go ahead and put the belt back on. We're just going to put the 14mm back on the end of the tensioner there, pull it back away once we get everything routed. The routing for your engine might be different, so there should be a something that you can find online for your particular engine if you don't remember how the serpentine belt goes back around the pulleys. So I'm not going to film that. I'll just come back when we're finished. Okay, and I'm just going to show you with this assembled. It took both of us and extra set of hands that we didn't have to get that right. These are a pain in the butt, but it can be done by yourself. You just have to be patient. Again, look up your diagram. I'll put the one up for this car, the 08 Acura right here, and that's what we used. All right, the next step is I'm going to put the motor mount back in, which you don't need to see that, because if you have the right tools, you were able to get on your tensioner there without having to take your motor mount out. We'll get that back together, and we're going to show you how we're going to hook up the high and low pressure side and get this thing filled up with power steering fluid. Okay, we're ready to start putting fluid back into the system. First of all, absolutely 100% use Honda brand genuine fluid. If you don't, you're going to have a leaker. Your power steering rack, everything will start leaking. Now what we're going to do is we're going to fill up the reservoir here, and we will try to get as much into the pump as we can. The high pressure side, don't use that. You'll need to use the low pressure side until it starts to run back out. Okay, we're going to go ahead and put the pressure, low pressure and the high pressure side on. Now keep in mind that these have O-rings on the backs of them, and inspect those and make sure that those look all right. This one actually stayed in, but that's not an issue either, because when this goes back in, it should fit itself right over. And that's plastic, so don't get it too tight. And again, you have an O-ring on the end of your high pressure line there as well. You want to inspect it and make sure. If you have O-rings, it would be probably a good idea to go and replace them right now.
Supposed to, oh, there it
Yeah, it'll pop in. Again, we torqued those to spec, which is probably around 10 foot-pounds. I wouldn't go much more than what he just did. That's enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pretty good, right?
Yeah, you don't want to break one of those off.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do now, we're going to crank the car up and see if he's got his power steering back yet. And as he's running that, I'm going to add some fluid to the reservoir, because it's probably going to go down once the pump starts turning. So we did get the car all back together. Everything is running. Nothing's grinding or tearing up or anything, but we cannot get the power steering back. We've been running the car, turning the steering wheel from lock to lock, and it's just foaming up into our reservoir right here. So what we suspect is that there's an O-ring behind this. This is where your fluid returns to your pump here, and it's probably letting air into the system right there, and that's causing us not to have power steering at this moment. He's going to run down to the store and get him one. I'm going to have to end the video here. So if you're having that problem with a foaming power steering fluid, know that these O-rings, mainly this one, needs to be good, or it's going to introduce air into the system, and then you just get foam built up into your reservoir, and your power steering is not going to work with foamy power steering fluid. So as you can see there at the end, that O-ring was exactly what was causing the problem. I had somewhere I had to be, so I could not continue working on the car that day, and I told him to go get some new O-rings and swap them out. After I left, though, it occurred to me, wait a minute, called him up, hey, check that box that the replacement came in, and sure enough, there was 2 new O-rings that had been buried in the bottom of the box. So he got those replaced, his power steering came back immediately, so that's great. Sorry I didn't get to show that. I do like to show, at the end of the video that I did complete the repair, but I promise you, I did. At any rate, I appreciate each and every one of you for watching today, and I'll catch you on the next video.